Hey guys, so today we are multiplying decimals, okay? And when we multiply decimals, we're actually using something that you're going to be really familiar with, and that is the multiplication algorithm. So you guys have multiplied numbers before in previous years. You've multiplied one-digit numbers, two-digit numbers, three-digit numbers, so you should be okay with that part. There's just one extra step that we need to do when we multiply decimals. So let's have a look at what that is. So during this lesson, we're going to multiply decimals by removing the decimal points, okay? And I want you to think of this word here, decimal points, okay? Try to picture that, what a decimal point looks like in your mind. In order to do this, we need to be able to count the number of decimal places, okay? Now I want you to think of what decimal places are and the difference between decimal places and decimal points. We will put these back into the answer at the end, okay? So what we're going to do is we're essentially going to remove the decimal points from the question, and we're going to do a normal multiplication. And then once we finish our answer, we're going to make sure that our answer had the same number of decimal places in it that the question did in the first place. So let's have a look at this a little bit more in depth. So I'm going to write down a question here. I'm going to write, let's say 2.34 times 1.2, okay? So the first thing we need to do is we need to count the number of decimal places in the question. So remember, decimal places are the digits that come after the decimal point. So in this one, we've got 1, 2, and over here we've got 1 as well, which means that we have 3 decimal places in this question, okay? So the answer there is 3. So now we need to remove the decimal points and multiply the numbers as you normally would with whole numbers. So let's rewrite this so that those decimal points aren't there, and let's just do the question. So 2 times 4 is 8, 2 times 3 is 6, 2 times 2 is 4. Next line, remember we need to add our zeros in. If you need to go back and remember how to multiply with more than one digit, just ask me for some help and we'll help you. 1 times 4 is 4, 1 times 3 is 3, 1 times 2 is 2. Okay, so 8 plus 0 is 8, 6 plus 4 is 10, 7, 8, and 2. Okay, so we've got our answer, 2808. So remove the decimal points and multiply the numbers as you normally would with whole numbers. Tick, we have done that. Once you determine the answer, put the decimal point back in so that you have the same number of decimal places that were in the question. So we had 3 decimal places in our question. So that means that we're going to have 3 decimal places in our answer. Okay, so I need to have 3 of these digits as decimal places. So that means I put my decimal point there. So I have 1, 2, 3 decimal places. Now, when you do these, guys, there's a lot of really good ways that you can just check your answers. Okay, you can check your answers by simply doing this question. You could do your 2.34 times 1.2, and you could do the actual multiplication and have a go at putting that decimal point in the right spot. All right, and then you could just check it on your calculator. Okay, your calculator right now for this topic is a really good way of checking to see whether or not you're on the right track. So as you're doing these questions, I would have your calculator next to you, okay, and you can go and check to see if you're getting them correct. All right, let's move on. Okay, so now we're going to have a look at a more in-depth example and just go over it again before you guys do some practice questions. So, number 1, count the number of decimal places in the question. That's the first thing that you need to do. So this one here, very simple question, 1.6 times 1.2. We can see that there are 2 decimal places in this question, okay? So the green ones there, they're the decimal places because they're the digits that come after the decimal point. Then we need to remove the decimal points and multiply. So with this question here, okay, 16 times 12, because we don't have decimal points anymore, we do the multiplication. 2 times 6 is 2, it's 12. 2 times 1 is 2, plus the 1 that we carried makes 32, and then we add in our 0, and 1 times 6 is 6, and 1 times 1 is 1, and then we add them together, okay, to give us 192. But step 3, now we need to put the decimal point back into the answer so that it has 2 decimal places, okay? So here we can see our 2 decimal places. I've taken the 192 over and I've given it 2 decimal places, okay? So that our answer is 1.92. Now once again, very, very simple. If you have a calculator next to you so you can check your answer as you go, okay? But basically, all we need to do is we need to remove the decimal points and multiply those numbers, okay? Once you get your answer, then we count how many decimal places were in that question, okay? And we just make sure that our answer has the same number of decimal places, okay? So it's now your turn to do some practice. Have a go at these ones, all right? Have a go at these ones. You will notice with a lot of these, they only have a single digit there, okay? So it's 0 point something. So in order to set out this first one, you would just do 35 times 5, okay? And then you would obviously add in your decimal places at the end, okay? So have a go at these. I'll give you 2 minutes to do these. Actually, I might give you 3 minutes, I think, to do these ones. And then we will go through the answers. Good luck. All right, answer time. So let's go through these. So 35 times 5, that's the first thing that we need to do. 35 times 5, 5 fives are 25, and 5 times 3 gives me 15, plus 2 makes 17. So that means I've got 175, and now I count my decimal places. I've got 1, 2 decimal places, so that means that my answer has to have 2 decimal places. And my answer is 1.75. Next one, 214 times 8, okay? 8 fours are 32, 1 times 8 is 8, plus the 3 gives me 11, okay, carry that 1. 8 times 2 is 16, plus the 1 gives me 17, okay? So my answer there is 1,712, and now let's count the decimal places. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 decimal places. So that means that I'm going to have to put my decimal point right here, okay? And my answer will be 0.1712, okay? This next one here, I've got to do 366, oops, 366 times 3, okay? 3 sixes gives me 18, 3 sixes gives me 18 plus the 1 is 19, and 3 threes is 9 plus the 1 gives me 10. So over here I've got 1098, okay? And I have 1, 2, 3, 4 decimal places. So once again, if I count all the way from over here, I go 1, 2, 3, 4. That's where my decimal point needs to go. So my answer would be 0.1098. Next one, 99 times 9. Okay, 9 nines are 81. Carry the 8. 9 nines are 81. Plus 8 gives me 89. Okay, equals 891. Now here, I've got lots of decimal places. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So this one's going to be a little bit different because I'm going to have to actually go 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got a space. So I've got to add in a 0 there, and then another 0 with my decimal point. So my answer there would be 0.0891. So if you have a smaller number than the amount of decimal points or places, the amount of decimal places that you have, you just add in a 0, okay, to make up that extra decimal place, okay? Okay guys, before we jump into these next questions, we just need to go through a couple of little things because they're slightly different, these ones, okay? So let's have a look at them. So here it says multiply the following decimals, and it's the same sort of thing. We've got a decimal number, however, our second number is like a number that's like 500 or 80 or 300 or 900. So when we were multiplying by powers of 10, we always had a 1, okay? And then zeros after it. Instead of having a 1, we've got a different digit here, okay? So we've got a different digit that we'll need to multiply by. However, you can still treat this like multiplying by powers of 10, which we did a lesson or two ago. So what we can do here is we can get rid of these zeros, okay? We can get rid of those zeros by moving our decimal point 2 places to the right because we're multiplying, and we'd end up with 3,050. And now we just multiply it by 5. Now, the other thing that happens when we move that decimal point is we no longer have any decimal places in our question, which means that we can just multiply this number, and whatever answer we get, okay, that is the answer that we have. So here I do 5 times 0, which is 0. 5 fives is 25. Okay, 5 times 0 is 0, but we bring down that 2. And 5 times 3 is 15, okay? So that means that my answer here would be 15250. Now, you can do this a few different ways. You could say, oh, sorry, Mr. Wheel, that doesn't really make sense to me, which is fine. And you could just do 305 times 500 and then put your decimal point back in at the end. That would work as well. Another way that you could do it is you could say, all right, I'm not going to think about those zeros at the moment. I'm going to do 305 times 5, okay, and 5 fives are 25, okay, 5 times 0 is 0, I'll bring down the 2, and then 5 times 3 is 15, and then I had 1 decimal place in my answer, so that means I have 152.5, and now you can deal with these zeros by moving that decimal point 2 places to the right, okay? So my answer would become exactly what my answer is down here. So there's a few different ways that you can work this out, okay? But the way that I use, you may choose to use it if you want to. You could use one of those other methods that I just showed you, was I get rid of that 0 straight away. I move the decimal point to a new position, and then I just multiply by what's there. It's always just remember, okay, it's always important to remember that when you move that decimal point, to take note of how many decimal places there are in your question there, so then you can add them back in at the end if you need to. It may be a case like this one here where you didn't need to add any back in because we got rid of all of our decimal places at the start, okay? So have a go at these ones. I'll give you 2 minutes to do 2, 3, and 4, and then we'll go through the answers. Okay, time to go through the answers for these ones. So, like I said, I'm going to get rid of that 0 and I'm going to change that to 21.4. And now let's multiply. So 214 times 8. All right, 8 fours are 32. 8 times 1 is 8 plus 3 gives me 11. And 8 times 2 is 16 plus the 1 gives me 17. So my answer here is 1712, but I have one decimal place in my question, so that means I need to put that decimal place in there to give me 171.2. This next one here, I'm going to get rid of those 2 zeros straight away. 1, 2. So that means that I'm going to have no decimal places to put into my answer, and I've just got 366 times 3. Okay, and 3 sixes are 18. And 3 sixes are 18, but it's 19 because I carried the 1. 3 threes are 9, and that makes 10. Okay, so my answer here is 1098, and that is all that my answer is. I don't need to shift those decimal places, they're all gone. Okay, so that's my answer. This next one, I'm going to do the same thing. Let's get rid of those 2 zeros and shift our decimal points, okay, to the right. So I end up with 999 times 9. There are a lot of 9s here. 9 nines, 81. 9 nines, 81. Plus the 1 gives me 9. 9 nines, 81. Plus the 8 gives me 89. Okay, so my answer here is 8,991. Once again, I don't need to worry about any decimal places because my 2 zeros took care of those for me, and those are the answers to those ones. So guys, hopefully you've understood some of those. If you haven't, jump into the meeting and we'll go through some more. But if not, head over to the understanding questions and try to get some of those done. Good luck.